Hello all, I'm Carrie and welcome back to my channel. This video is about how I failed and then succeeded in dyeing pre-colored silk a lovely green. And although I used Dharma fiber reactive dyes and other products, this video is not sponsored by anyone. One of my dear friends gave me this champagne colored striped silk after she bought it at Coco a few years ago for a great price and then decided to let it go. As she was handing it to me, she said, "You could dye this." And that effectively added a very exciting item to my costuming project's to-do list because I instantly imagined it as green and I love to learn new things. How hard could dyeing fabric be?
Oh, my sweet summer child.
I did make an open robe from the silk, and the gold is lovely, but I want green. Green like Baby Yoda, like Kermit, like Epidote, and Olivine and demantoid garnet. Can you tell I love minerals? And my garden in the spring and at the height of summer. So I bought some Avocado fiber reactive dye from Dharma Trading Company because it was the prettiest and the most economical green, along with some soap. I eyed the other things they sell to go with their dyes and ignored everything that said optional or that I could get locally. This next section of the video is on my failed attempt at dyeing my silk. If you would rather skip to the tutorial on how to successfully dye the fabric, skip to this timestamp in the video. For those of you who want to enjoy my disaster, here we go. As a scientist and a science teacher, I think it is important to show mistakes and what we can learn from them, which is how science actually works. Plus, several people have responded to my photos of the dyed silk on Instagram saying they have not been able to dye silk, so hopefully my failure and then success can help build confidence in others to try again. Dharma's website contains many articles with instructions on dyeing various fabric types with different types of dyes. I went to the article on dyeing wool and silk, as one does. The first sentence states that silk can be dyed using the same tub dyeing method as cotton, but when you go to the link given, it takes you to an article that says silk should be dyed using the first method. So I was confused and began to conflate the directions in each, but ended up following the directions in the wool and silk article, sort of. Both articles recommend testing a patch of the fabric, but I was too impatient for that. Give me the green. Instead, I threw the whole yardage in my washer and washed it on hot with 1/4 cup of Synthropol soap, which is supposed to remove all oils and other stuff that might prevent the dye from bonding with the fabric. The wool and silk instructions call for dyeing on the stove, but I did not have a pot large enough for my 10 yards or 3.5 pounds of silk, which I weighed on a kitchen scale. So I decided to use my washing machine and fill it with hot water after the Synthropol wash. My machine is a Whirlpool top-loading, low-water, high-efficiency washer, and I put it on the soak cycle and then paused it after it filled with hot water. But there wasn't enough water to cover the fabric, so I brought jug after jug of water from the kitchen to the basement. I got in a lot of steps. I dissolved 1 cup of salt or 16 tablespoons and added it to the water. The instructions call for 3 to 9 tablespoons per pound of fabric, and I thought 30 tablespoons was excessive. As I was adding more water to the machine, much to my horror, it drained. Bye-bye, salt! I guess being a low water machine means it does not want to hold more than a certain amount. I'm glad I hadn't put in the dye yet. I got mad and unplugged it and threw in a few tablespoons of salt and several more gallons of water. The instructions call for 1 to 2 tablespoons of powdered dye per pound of fabric, so I put in between 6 and 7 tablespoons after dissolving it in a cup of warm water. You would think I could let the water agitate and then I could pause and restart that part of the cycle on my washer, but that's just not how my washer works. So I had to stir by hand using tongs, a large slotted spoon, and eventually my gloved hands for 10 minutes. Then I added 2 cups of white vinegar and stirred again for 30 minutes. I was supposed to be simmering on the stove this whole time, but of course you can't do that in a washer, so I just kept adding, oh, do you hear the train? I just kept adding hot water from my tea kettle, effectively diluting the dye. The fabric did not look how I expected, but I plugged in my washer and ran it on hot with more Synthropol, hoping for the best. I was disappointed. I messaged my friend Sandy, who has lots of experience dyeing silk, and had recommended Dharma's avocado color to me. We basically figured out that I had put in too much water, did not put in enough salt or dye, and that I should use soda ash instead of white vinegar. Essentially, I needed to use the tub dyeing method for cotton if I wanted a better color, even if soda ash or sodium bicarbonate can diminish the shine of some silks. Given the sickly yellow of my fabric, I decided I'd risk dulling the silk if I could have a better color. Dharma provides a convenient chart for figuring out how much dye, salt, and soda ash or washing soda you need, and I was appalled at the amounts. For 3.5 pounds of fabric, I needed 3.5 tablespoons of dye, only 10.5 gallons of water, 10.5 cups of salt.
Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my god.
And 1.25 cups of washing soda. Yeesh. I texted my husband and asked him to get me washing soda and more salt, like 10 pounds, on his way home from work, while I put more water on to heat and dissolve what salt I had. I used canning salt because it is not iodized and it is finely ground for quick dissolving. I guess the little sodium and chlorine ions help the dye attach to the fabric and bond with it. Sandy also told me I should use at least 4 ounces of dye for a large load, so I ignored the Dharma chart and pasted up 1/2 cup of my avocado and thanked my past self for getting more than I thought I needed. While awaiting my salt and soda, I added salty, hot water to the unplugged washer and dissolved the dye. When my husband got home, I ripped open a box of the salt and threw the entire contents in, swirled it around, and then added the dye. Then I carefully lowered my silk into the steamy concoction with a silent prayer to Baby Yoda, patron saint of green, feeling like a witch. 10.5 gallons is not enough water to cover the fabric when at least 2 gallons sinks below the washer barrel thingy. To make sure the fabric dyed evenly, I pressed down on it with my gloved hands, this time in kitchen gloves, while rotating the washer barrel to make sure I got every balloon that rose above the waterline. I did this for 20 minutes, only taking a few 30-second breaks to stretch my back. I hurriedly dissolved the washing soda in 2 cups of warm water, but it did not really dissolve, or at least not entirely, but I was afraid of adding more water and diluting the dye bath. The directions say to slowly add the soda over the course of 15 minutes and not directly on the fabric. So I pushed the fabric aside before pouring in a bit, swirled it around, and then swirled the wonky fabric around. I think I added it all in more like 7 or 10 minutes. Then it was another 30 minutes of pressing the fabric down into the dye bath on rotation, pulling it up and untwisting it so there were no secret folds avoiding the dye, and wondering if this would be easier if I was taller. I did not get great footage of this step until I braved holding my camera in one hand and pressing down with the other. I highly recommend using the camera's wrist strap. Dharma says to go 30 minutes for lighter shades, an hour for darker, but after 30, I was exhausted and very hungry, and the fabric looked so much better, so I plugged in the washer, set it to drain and spin, then did another hot wash with 1/4 cup of Synthropol. I did throw the fabric into my dryer for 10 minutes and then pulled out a still wet but perfect goose poop green striped silk. I ironed the nonsense while listening to A Discovery of Witches by Deborah Harkness on Hoopla. Hot take, it is Twilight, plus witches and demons minus the sparkles and set in England. Have you read this book? What are you reading or listening to right now? Please let me know in the comments. I am so happy with how this fabric turned out. The embroidery threads look brownish green, but the rest of the fabric is definitely green and still has some of that silky shine. The green makes my eyes so happy, and that's probably because green is my favorite color and it's one of the easiest colors for our eyes to process. All those ions from the salt and the washing soda and the water probably help the dye attach to the fabric, which makes sense because charged atoms and molecules in solutions at the very end of magma crystallization help gorgeous and huge minerals grow like emeralds. One medieval remedy for eye ailments is was apparently, ingesting ground up emeralds. Don't eat emeralds, this is just how my mind works. So why did the dye work better the second time? Dyeing pre-colored fabric is tricky because the pre-existing color impacts the final color. It's best to dye quote-unquote virgin white fabric, but the more concentrated dye bath helped. And why did soda ash work where vinegar did not? Vinegar is acidic and therefore has lots of hydrogen ions floating around, while soda ash in water is alkaline, meaning fewer H+ ions, and it also has more OH molecules. Maybe the negatively charged hydroxyl molecules are better at making the stubborn silk proteins take on dye. Yay, chemistry. Ions at work. What am I going to do with this fabric? Make a dress inspired by Victorian arsenic green gowns? An 18th century anglaise so I have an excuse to buy the green Sophie mules from American Duchess? A crazy 1890s bicycle suit with pink ribbon flowers? Or in honor of how much salt I used, maybe I should make some pickle sister costumes for myself and for some friends. I'm currently leaning towards the anglaise because shoes, but please tell me what you think in the comments below. And thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video or learned something, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my channel for more fabric and costuming adventures. Thanks, bye!